West Ham are reportedly in discussions with Bristol City midfielder Alex Scott for a potential deal of £22 million. And we're going to have to fight, you name it, hardcore to bring this player through the doors of the London Stadium. Now, I've titled this show The Truth. Alex Scott, The Truth. What's going on? Essentially, who fucking cares what's going on, because we don't essentially know what is going on. I'm not digging out anyone. I'm not digging out any of the other channels or social media accounts. I'm just essentially coming here to say something quite sincere and quite straight to the point, that we don't essentially know what's going on. There's so many conflicting stories out there about what's right and what's wrong when it comes to not just West Ham transfer stories, but also transfer stories throughout the ages, throughout the years, throughout all of the sources, you name it. It's been relentless since we've done it. Russie B has given us a list of about 100 odd players that we've been linked to. And if one of those players stick, all jokings aside, or putting jokes into it, if one of those players stick, then suddenly, there's a little bit of ITK knowledge, etc. And it's not digging out anybody individually. It's really not. Trust me, it's not. No intentions of that. But I think essentially, for me, sometimes it's about using your noggin a little bit when it comes to these. We as West Ham Network have a responsibility to give you the news that we take on board. So we like to say to you who are watching that we don't have sources close to the club. We kind of generalize that by the comments that are made from elsewhere. And we bring to you some of the news stories that come out with regards to West Ham, and therefore try and build up whether or not we think there's an early element of truth to it or not. And if we do, then we try and use our noggin a little bit and go, well, do you know what? Essentially, I could see why that player would work. Or, when you hear of background issues at West Ham, and then you start to think, well, David Moyes' style of play, if he was under threat last season, you bring in Tim Steidham, and you've got someone who knows the club in Mark Noble. Does that all make sense that one person would jeopardize another person's deal? I don't know. Essentially, it comes down to the fact that I don't really care, if I'm being honest. I want to just make sure that West Ham get the right deals done. And I'm not essentially caring about, the nitty-gritty about what actually goes on inside these rooms. I think we all, I'll take that back. I think we all would care if we had inside knowledge in terms of being inside that room and could see word for word what is actually being said should these conversations take place. But essentially, for me, it all comes down to one thing and one thing only. Will that player be wearing the West Ham shirt, and will they give it 100%? So if we do sign the player, then we back the player to the guns. If we don't, we push on and move on. So essentially here, it's about West Ham and West Ham fans understanding the truth. I've seen some tweets kicking about saying that West Ham fan channels need to take some form of responsibility. I completely hold my hands up, and I completely agree. But the nature of what we do, the nature of media, and the nature of what is being reported is what we've decided to take on board and try and discuss whether or not there's an element of truth to it. That's why we will discuss all the transfer rumors that are linked to West Ham and discuss whether or not we think there is an element of truth to it. So we do believe Alex Scott is a player that West Ham are looking at bringing in. And he registered a goal and 5 assists from 42 outings last year for Bristol City. Now, back in February, several people reporting that West Ham, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth joined the race to bring the midfielder into the club. But are David Moyes and Tim Steidham set to kick off their new era at the London Stadium with a big money purchase from the Championship and bringing this young talent in for around about £22 million? Now, he is a type of player that would make fans turn up and get their bums off the seats. There is no ifs or buts about it. He's got some silky control. He's versatile. He's got a very good understanding of football, technically gifted, maturity, despite his very young age, his ability to weave his magic in the middle and also the final third of the game would balance nicely with the physicality that we've got in the middle of our park. And just at 19 years old, he's got a lot of room to improve, a lot of room to progress and move up in his own ability as well. A little similar bit like Declan Rice. Now, he's got such an array of talent that when he played Manchester City in the FA Cup defeat back in February, Pep Guardiola even said he's an unbelievable player after his performance. Okay, people may say, well, what's the point of saying that if you're not going to go and sign the player? But essentially, that is what he did say. He was named in the Young Players Player of the Year for the Championship. And it's easy to see why, considering his impressive stats for Bristol City. And they're not really built as a dominant team in the English second tier. But he ranks in the top 11% of all midfielders in the 8 competitions most similar to the Championship for progressive carries. And he's also ranked in the top 16% for successful take-ons as well. And in that tie against Man City last season, Bristol City did lose 3-0, but he had 5 dribbles in that game, were the joint of most of any player during that game. And at that level shows that maybe he could step up to the plate. His opponents were Phil Foden, he had Riyad Mahrez and Bernardo Silva, just to name a few players that, you know, he could hold his own against as well. And he doesn't seem to be phased by stepping up to the regime as well. So, you know, I think we've got a good bit of history of bringing players in from the Championship, players that can take a while to adapt, but can also progress and move through the ranks. Jared Bowen, just to name one player more recently who's took a little bit of time, but that was also David Moyes' decision, and then has hit the ground running since joining the club from Hull City. And I think Alex Scott's got a lot of people chasing after him. He really does, and that probably explains his price tag. Bristol City need to look after themselves as well. They need to ensure that they're bringing in the right amount of money so they can then move forward and establish and move on from potentially getting rid of this player. Other clubs are interested. Wolves now sitting in there saying they're having deep conversations with the representatives from Alex Scott's team, and it's clear that he is a very, very clever footballer who's got the trajectory in the right direction. Now, I think we should go all out and try and bring this young player in, but who am I to sit here and say we will do that? I can't. I don't know the inside knowledge. I said that about Harvey Barnes, and I'm a bit disappointed at the fact that we haven't moved for him. I thought he would be a right fit based upon what we look at, we need, and what we think we can do to change. And would that progress our style of play? Yeah. I think someone like Alex Scott looks like he would progress our style of play, but I think to myself, 25 million, Bristol City Championship. Will David Moyes play him from the off? Probably not. And would that be something that he wants to do and make the move? Well, it depends if he believes in the vision. Does he look at someone like Jared Bowen and think, I can make a change in that team? So going back to the point of the truth, I don't know the truth. Nobody knows the truth except for those people in that room. You know, I know there's leaks, I know there's sources, all that sort of stuff. But sometimes these are all different. And we have a responsibility to make sure that you do know that we don't know. Me at the West Ham Network, not anyone else, but we at the West Ham Network. Enjoy the summer if you can. When it comes to links, this is what we expect at this stage of the season. We want West Ham to move quickly, but we have to wait for the money to come in. Please remember, we have to wait for this money to come in with regards to Declan Rice. I believe before we have to make a move. I think we can do some business nice and early because we should be doing the negotiation talks now, etc., etc. But also, Tim Stein's just in his role, so you've got to give that the benefit of the doubt. You have to give that the benefit of the doubt. If you don't give that the benefit of the doubt, then you're just going back to your old way of thinking in terms of the summer. But if this man's going to come in and establish himself in his role and make a difference in his role, he needs to be given a little bit of time. I know we're only 5 weeks until the season starts, but I do want to see a bit of movement, particularly next week, and fingers crossed we can get that movement. This is me not calling out any other people from other channels or other social accounts or Twitter or Facebook. This is just me talking to you as a West Ham fan, saying, do we know the truth? No, we don't know the truth. But do we think Alex Scott's a player that we should pursue? Well, according to reports, it looks like we are. And whether or not you believe what's happening, then some people are saying it's not going to happen, and some people are saying it is going to happen. But either way, what we do know is we're going to have to move fast to bring in some recruits. So fingers crossed we do that. Take it easy, everyone. If you're new around here, hit the subscribe, like, you name it. All that sort of stuff that you need to do when you come around here. Put your comments in, let me know your thoughts, hit the thumbs up, and of course, much respect to everyone else out on all the other channels as well. Come on, you irons.